Hello, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for my latest deep dive video. This one into the Aquarius full moon across the 23rd and 24th of July 2021. Now I'm going to be focusing on the event based on Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Time, and that's at 3:36 AM on the 24th. But you can see on the screen when the full moon will occur around the world. If you're new to my channel, I would be honoured if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Also, if you click underneath this video, you can subscribe to your free daily horoscope to your device each morning. Or if you'd like to soar above your zodiac sign or ascendant, you can engage with my wonderful 12-month forecast and character analysis combination special offer of 30% off and gain searing insights based on your unique birth data for your opportunities ahead. Now this event, what I want to do as usual is explore not just the full moon in the sign of Aquarius, which I do think a lot of astrologers will be focusing upon. What I like to do is look at the event in a wider way. So at this particular time, the ascendant, as you can see on the screen, is at 12 degrees and 5 minutes in the sign of Cancer. And that means that the full moon itself falls in the 8th house. In astrology, we divide the 360-degree wheels by 12. And in Placidus, this particular event sees the moon at 1 degree 26 in Aquarius, the sun at 1 degree 26 Leo, but the sun's in the 2nd house of everyday finance and the moon's in the 8th house of longer term finance, but also where we're most invested in a more spiritual context. It's where we're really engaged with others. But we do have Saturn in that 8th house too, in the sign of Aquarius, in retrograde. So if we look at this event just in terms of the sign of Leo and the sign of Aquarius, Leo is very much about being individualistic. It's about warmth, affection. It's very charismatic. It can be where we can showcase our individual talent. The sign of Aquarius is much more about the collective. It's where we connect to others. So Aquarius moon energy can be a bit more detached, a bit more rebellious, and it's pushing back against, if you like, the ego of the sun in the sign of Leo. And it's saying, don't forget about our responsibilities to others. And I think that could be true around our resources because of the 2nd 8th house axis that's being evoked as much as anything else. Now there's also a very powerful link in this particular event between Mars in the sign of Leo and Neptune and Pluto. And I think the one that really calls out for me is the quincunx between Mars and Pluto. But of course this creates a yod. Now Mars in Leo is a very proud location for Mars to be, and it's in the 3rd house, which can make us more opinionated. Because Neptune's in the 10th house, which is about our work and the way we interact with the world at large, that can create a potential for distortion, because Mars in Leo is very much about desire and to show off, manifest our pride, if you like. And of course Pluto in Capricorn is very much about resources, because the sign of Capricorn is very much about what we've worked for over a long period of time. It's about tradition, and it can be more material. Ironically, in this chart, Pluto's in the 7th house of relationships. So this yod, if you like, throws up some challenges. Mars in the quincunx of Pluto can create the wrong kind of desire, where we go for something whatever the cost. So we could kid ourselves about an opportunity professionally, Neptune in the 10th house, whereas we have to just stay a little bit humble, stay aware of how things affect others, the group, which is coming through the prism of the moon in the sign of Aquarius. Now the other thing that's clearly happening on this day is that Jupiter and Venus are in an opposition. Now Jupiter's in retrograde. It's just still in its home zone of Pisces, but in the 9th house. So I think if you're fortunate enough over the next couple of weeks to be able to travel somewhere, there could be a real desire to enjoy every single minute of it and soak every bit of pleasure out of that experience. But I think we're being cautioned because of that yod not to overdo things, particularly when it comes to sex or alcohol or drugs, because Neptune can really distort things, and Mars and Pluto can be very much to do with sex. So it's just about maybe wanting too much of a good thing and just keeping the detachment of the moon in Aquarius at the heart of what we do, making sure that we're being decent in our approach to others and not getting too caught up, if you like, in the consumption energies of the Sun in Leo and the Mars position of Leo too. Now, some astrologers are going to be talking about the fact that the position of Venus quincunxes the full moon, and I would like to focus more on the fact that the full moon is in a semi-sextile with Jupiter and see that as more of a positive, particularly as Jupiter is going to be returning back to the sign of Aquarius soon. And I think the angle between Mars and Pluto and Mars and Neptune is far more powerful than the position between Venus and the full moon in that quincunx. So that's just my personal opinion. So we have an opportunity through this event to think very much about resources, but also enjoying the things we love. Now, the other thing to tell you about is that the position of the moon at 1 degree 26 is in the first 2.5 degrees of Aquarius. Therefore, in terms of dwarfs or the 12th harmonic, it has a greater Aquarius vibration, but it's also very close to the fixed star Altar. Now, I have Altar right on my Sun, so quite interesting. So this can confer somebody who is quite ambitious, quite liberal. I'll take that. It can lead to riches. Well, we'll take that as well. But it is important in its relationship to the moon to be conscious that we can get into hot water with larger corporations if we're not too careful. So I think because the moon's in the 8th house of loans, pensions, insurances, and we do have that very desirous energy of the Sun and Mars in Leo, and of course Mars in that quincunx with Pluto and also Neptune, we just trim back any desire to spend out too much money or take on loans, over egg the pudding in order to get something that gives us some kind of instant gratification, which actually won't necessarily be very good for us. Now, as usual, I'm now going to go on and explain how this particular event will influence each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. So Aries, for you, of course, the Sun being in the sign of Leo is fantastic. It's the 5th house. This is very much about showcasing your talent, your warmth. And I just think over the next couple of weeks, you may need to take care of your time management a little bit more carefully. Perhaps you're going to be a victim of your own success. Everybody can want a piece of you, which is absolutely lovely. But with Saturn in your 11th house already, I already think that perhaps you're clearing out some old friends from your situation. I don't think this is a nasty thing. It's more about wanting to focus on the people who are really relevant in your situation in the here and now. So there could be a bit more about this over the next couple of weeks. If you're involved in a romantic relationship, this full moon is saying don't forget your friends. If you're involved in a romantic relationship where you're much more focused on your social world type of Aries, it's saying don't forget about your partner. So that's where you need to work on over the next couple of weeks. Now, Taurus, for you, it's very much about home, but because Saturn and the full moon are in your 10th house of work, ambition and goals, perhaps if you are being taken away from your home by those things, because as we wake up from COVID, where possible, and perhaps normal interaction is becoming much more the case, it's possible that some of the time you have been spending at home or with family, you will start to mourn. On the other hand, perhaps you're really going to be delighted about that. Either way, with the Sun and Mars in your 4th house, if you do make some physical changes at home, even moving altogether over the next couple of weeks or instigating the process, it wouldn't be a surprise. Now for you, Gemini, it's rather nice having this full moon in Leo because it evokes the 3rd house. The 3rd house is very redolent of your zodiac sign. So this is quick moving. It can be very engaging. Your agility to get on with different types of people is boosted. With Mars in your 3rd house too, you can punch across your ideas with greater conviction. But just be aware that with work being affected by that Neptunian influence in your 10th solar house and Pluto affecting your desire to improve your financial situation, I wouldn't push too hard to get what you feel is rightly yours unless you've clearly got all the details of a situation at your fingertips, because maybe someone won't be quite as receptive as you would like. But it is true that Mercury does retain its position, your ruler, in your 2nd solar house, and that's given you a desire to improve your lot. Funnily enough, that's forging a gorgeous angle to Neptune. It's just in an opposition with Pluto. So don't try too hard, but I certainly feel that you can articulate yourself well. But the 9th house energies of Saturn just says that when it comes to a legal matter or a contract, I think you can't force someone to play fair. I do think it's going to be important to try to be as diplomatic as possible. Now Cancer, clearly with Mercury, as I've just been mentioning, in your sign forging a beautiful angle to Neptune, your imagination can be excellent, but the Sun's in the part of your scope to do with your everyday resources. So because this particular event chart based on Greenwich created an ascendant in Cancer, so this event is very much in keeping with the energies of your sign. So the Sun in the 2nd house is about what we want to consume on a regular basis. It's our daily budget and finance, and the Moon's in your 8th house, very much what you share with others. If there's someone around you who's not contributing as much as you would like, that could frustrate you. Also, with Saturn in your 8th house, if money is tight in general, that can prove frustrating. And with Mars in your 2nd house, your desire to push and be quite determined to get what you feel you're worth could see you tempted to be a bit more ruthless around a negotiation in its angle to Pluto. But Neptune can distort the reality around contracts. So I really feel, of all the zodiac signs, be most mindful of my overall analysis for this event. Now, for you, Leo, obviously this particular event sees the Moon in your 7th house. But I think what the Sun's saying to you, along with Mars, is, look, it is important to stay single-minded at times, to not necessarily always bow to what other people want from us. You love the limelight, and there's no doubt about it. The Moon in Aquarius is kind of taking it away from you. It's saying that you need to retain a democratic approach to your affairs, whereas the Sun and Mars are saying, look, it's important to focus on your individual talents. If you get too caught up in people pleasing, you could lose impetus. I think it's about finding a balance. Now Virgo, for you, with Venus just edging into your sign, that's increasing your sex appeal. It's in the 3rd house of this event, but of course for you the full moon occurs in the 6th house of everyday obligations and responsibilities, very much in keeping with the energies of your own sign. But the Sun and Pluto, the Sun and Mars, I beg your pardon, are in your 12th house. Watch out, someone at work can be picky, critical, but they won't necessarily tell you. It could be something that they're a bit sly about. So watch out for secret enemies. Also, when it comes to your health and fitness, I don't see any particular issue, but you're just being asked to see your being in a holistic way. So not just focus on running, swimming, cycling to get actually fitter. Make sure that your nutrition is good. Make sure that you're getting plenty of rest. make sure that you're conscious of your vulnerabilities and anxieties, and don't feel hung up about them. They're all part of all of us. So the spiritual, emotional and physical trinity is all nicely aligned. Now Libra, having a full moon in the 5th house is very much about where you want to demonstrate your creativity and your talent. But Saturn's been quite a hard taskmaster for you, literally. Perhaps since the 22nd of March 2020 through to the 2nd of August that year, and then since the 17th of December last year, maybe years, depending on where the sun or the ascendant or the moon is in your sign. Maybe since then you felt you've really had to push and be very disciplined in order to demonstrate to people your qualities. Unfortunately, that's not going to change, but you know, when Saturn leaves the sign of Aquarius, you will look back on this period and realise how it's given you a lot of push to make the most of your talents, because you can be someone who's supremely clever, but also you lack a bit of motivation at times, perhaps because you overanalyze things trying to find the perfect situation, or perhaps because of the role of Pluto, and before that Saturn and Jupiter in 220 and 219 in the case of Saturn, you have been so caught up about where you live, who you live with and how, until that was addressed, you haven't really been able to flourish. Hopefully this full moon is giving you an opportunity to start to do that. What the sun's saying, along with Mars, is don't forget it's important to have fun in life, to connect with others. But I think it is true that the fun part of your nature needs to work with your daily routine. So I wouldn't be consuming too much of the good things in life at this time. I think it's a time to keep focusing on what makes you special and what you need to express, and have some pleasures, but keep focusing on you. Very important for you, Libra. Now, Scorpio, for you, the midpoint of this event is actually right at the start of your sign, around about 1 3/4 degrees in the sign of Scorpio, and in the 5th house, so that's lovely. But for you, the sun in the sign of Leo, along with your traditional ruler of Mars, is very much about success, ambitions and goals, whereas the moon's in the part of your situation to do with where you live, and of course Saturn's in this location too. You can't flourish in the wider world if you're not feeling settled at home. So the next couple of weeks may bring some kind of issue that you've been trying to grapple with. It can bring it more sharply into focus. But I think because Mars is in a very ambitious sector and is in that quincunx with Pluto, you could be very forceful about going for the golden prize over the next couple of weeks. Just be aware of how it affects you at home. If you're on the road working or on your computer all the time, being very productive in terms of your earnings, but you can't remember what your family looks like, the balance is clearly not right. Now, Sagittarius, this event occurs in terms of the moon in your 3rd house. So it's saying to you, make sure that what you say or think correlates with how you really feel. Because the sign of Sagittarius, rather like Gemini, is mutable, and you have this amazing passion to keep moving forwards, you can dust yourself down after setbacks and go forwards again in a very progressive way, which I personally have great admiration for Sagittarius people. But what you can do over a period of time is accumulate a sort of backlog of unresolved emotions. So the moon in the logical Aquarius can see you very clever at saying how you think you feel, but not actually saying how your heart feels. So that's the challenge for you. But because the sun's in your 9th house of adventure, very much in keeping with your sign, along with Mars, you want to be changing something. You want to be doing something that's more spontaneous and exciting and good for you. Just stay abreast of how it feels and don't deny your feelings because of the logic of the air sign of Aquarius. Now, Capricorn, for you, this event occurs in the mirror of the position for Cancer. So for you, the moon's in the 2nd house and the sun's in the 8th. So it is about where you're more invested with others. The moon is about how you feel about yourself. What is your relationship with you at the moment? That's the question this full moon is asking you. If it's good, despite the fact that Saturn, your ruler, is in the sign of Aquarius, therefore testing your relationship with yourself, I think this can be an opportunity for you to link with others, perhaps a business partnership, perhaps you can do something that is more entrepreneurial. In a spiritual dimension, the sun's in the part of your horoscope where you need to let go of some things and embrace some new things. So it's almost a transitions going on. But I think because you can be very safety first around resources, you may look at how things work materially before you get too much into the emotional dimension. And that's understandable. And of course you do have Pluto in your sign, forging a link with Mars in the sign of Leo in your 8th house. And they're kind of competing with one another. This can make you very lusty for power. And it's important, therefore, that if there is a situation where there is conflict around you, particularly with Neptune influencing neighbours, siblings, your community, just be cautious that you're not using the power of Mars to crush any opposition simply because somebody sees something different to you. Just worth bearing in mind. Now that brings us to Aquarius. For you, all day long, this event is about relationships. But because there's going to be a blue moon, a second full moon in Aquarius in exactly 1 month's time, obviously a rare event, this full moon, for me, I'd like to focus for Aquarius people on the fact that Jupiter is in a semi-sextile. And weirdly, it's going to be in a sextile, no, beg your pardon, it's going to be in a conjunction with Jupiter in 4 weeks' time, because Jupiter will have rewound back into Aquarius at that time. So relationships for sure are important. The Leo energy, it depends on how much Aquarius you've got in your chart. If you've got a lot of Aquarius, like I have, you may find people who have Mars in Leo a bit awkward, or even Moon in Leo. I don't find people with the Sun in Leo at all in a show. I think they can be amazing people. But certainly Mars in Leo can be quite an egotistical position, and Aquarius people are very much about the group and fairness and democracy. So if you've got a chart that's halfway Aquarius like mine, you could be finding that Mars in Leo a bit of a challenge at the moment. But it is in that quincunx with Pluto, just tucked up in the very last decan of Capricorn, preparing to move into Aquarius temporarily in 2023 and full time from 24. So it depends on where your planets are in Aquarius. I would say that some psychological issues are going on around some relationships for you. And if you feel that a relationship isn't working, Saturn in your sign could make you a bit stronger minded about how you're going to respond to the challenge. But I think what Jupiter is kind of saying is that whatever you decide about a relationship, I do feel that you need to feel that the other person values you, either in terms of their respect for you, which is a very Leo thing, or in terms of how they pay you, if it's a boss or a line manager or an organisation that you're a contractor for. So I think you're needing recognition in terms of people's respect for you on the back of this full moon. And if you don't get it, whether it's a Facebook friend, an associate, a neighbour, whatever, you're going to push back on that basis, which brings us to Pisces. Now, of course, you do have your two co-regents in your sign at the moment. Neptune in this chart is in the 10th house, so high in the sky, forging a beautiful link with Mercury in your 5th house for you, but in the 1st house of this particular chart. This is saying your imagination can be high, but having the position of the moon in your 12th house along with Saturn, it's quite psychological. And I just think that, yeah, there could be people around you that maybe with Venus in your opposite sign, you're needing to become more conscious of sincerity in relationships. There could be people who've been with you a long time and you may be fond of them and they may actually be very sincere, but maybe they're in some ways never challenging you with the real reality of a situation. If you're disguising the reality of a situation because your friends are being so protective, perhaps what this event is saying to you is try to see things in the raw a little bit, strip down the layers of the onion and be more truthful with yourself about how something feels, because you can grow and evolve from that. But the Sun, no doubt about it, and Mars are in your 6th house, which does promote being busy, hardworking, and showing a lot of industry. But the Moon's in a very psychological zone. And I think one of the things that worries me about Pisces people is at times you're so self-sacrificing, you do too much for others, and you don't look after yourself. So I would say if someone comes into your world with Venus in an opposition with your co-ruler of Jupiter and is pleasant, even if they challenge you in some way, be open to that person, because I feel there may be some people around you who are not really telling it as it is, and I think you need to be a bit more conscious about some of your imbalances. So, you know, whether it's around drink, drugs, sex, overwork, whatever your addiction is. Many of us have one of them, or some of them, you know, some kind of thing that we spend too much time doing. If you're doing too much of something but not focusing on what heals and makes you feel comfortable at a more spiritual level, that's the opportunity of this particular event. That concludes the full moon analysis, the deep dive for the Aquarius full moon across the 23rd, 24th of July. My chart based on the 24th in Greenwich in London, and been a pleasure being with you. Check out below for your free daily horoscope or my special offer on my natal reports. But for now, stay safe, take care, good luck and goodbye.